Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Scarselli. I've got with me Anthony Feor and Shawn DeLaat. Welcome to the show. We're here to talk about housing plans in Canada. If you look at the liberal housing plans, the conservative housing plan, this is a hot topic. And here we go. We'll talk about it, break it down, and see what we come up with.
Perfect. I love it.
Let's do it. Okay, so guys, I did some digging, and I don't know if you've seen it already. The liberal housing plan and the conservative housing plans are available online, and they're quite detailed, one more than the other. But first, before we get into that, let's talk about the idea of housing and what that means to you and to the average Canadian, and perhaps what that means to the government.
A surge in home prices is pushing housing affordability closer to historic lows. Home prices rose more than 4.5% in the July to September quarter. It's the largest jump in 6 quarters. Even if home prices hold steady, with high interest rates pushing mortgage fees up, housing could get even harder to afford in the months ahead.
Usually when interest rates rise, house prices fall. But with housing supply failing to keep up with demand in Canada, home buyers are facing both higher mortgage payments and high home prices.
What does housing mean to you?
Well, growing up, housing meant to me that, hey, I work hard and I buy a house and I live in it. My family lives in it as well. But now being a realtor and dealing with all these factors of affordability and everything like that, housing is a roof over someone's head. Whether it's a rental, whether it's a house you buy and own, that is housing to me.
But is that what you want housing to be, or is that essentially what has that come to be now?
That's not what I want housing to be. That's what housing has come to.
Okay. Anthony, what about you? What's housing mean? What does housing mean to you?
I've never called it housing. I've always called it a home, because that's how it should feel. 4 walls, roof over your head, whether it's an apartment, it's a condo, it's a bungalow, 2-story, all the designs you can pull out of the architect's playbook. That's what I've always defined it as. Now, I think housing, in my opinion, has obviously changed. I've been a realtor for 5 years, and it seems more to me as a tangible asset. And that's what it's become for me, because we've seen how exponentially values have grown over the last half century. I'm a millennial. I'm very proud to be one. I had no choice. That's just the cards I was dealt. But a lot of us want to have that piece of the pie as well. Private pensions are down. There's no public sector union jobs are down. No one works in a union anymore. That is our cake for the future, for happy retirement. But it's also evolved on another scale, because we see the rising amounts of homeless people. Right. So I'd like to just say, for me, housing, 4 walls, comfortable, a safe place for people to go. And that's how I've sort of defined it.
So when I think of housing, I think of the root word is house, right? Yeah. As or home, as you think of it. And I think that's evolved over time, because if I look at when my father came to Canada in the 70s, housing for him was home ownership. Mm-hmm. Building a home was an asset, was property. Yeah. Now, what do you think is the government's definition of housing today?
Well, judging by their performance since 1970, they probably feel the same way that I do, which is why a lot of governments want to see the real estate market grow. There's tax benefits for them. There's land transfer tax. They have parts of the Canada Pension Plan invested in real estate. They're involved in it just as much as a lot of investors are. The way that they see it publicly, they'll say it's shelter space. It's for people. Everybody deserves a home. But if you look at the plans and the policies that we've been doing and we've enacted in the last half century, it seems to be more geared towards you get it, you grow your funds, you retire, you cash out, you move on with your life. And that's what it's evolved to. And it's evolved in part because of those policies.
With that evolution, though, do you not find it's created quite a conundrum, in the sense that, yes, they want everyone to live this life and buy a house, but we can see now that that is slipping away for certain people, and it's still an opportunity for others. So with where we're at with all this stuff, and that's why it's key, I am very intrigued. I have not looked into the policies. I've always said, though, this election is going to be the fireworks, and it is really going to all come down to housing. They're both going to browbeat the housing.
Yeah, and I think, so here's the thing. If their focus was really that, okay, housing is going to mean home ownership, why are we now, by 2030, they're saying we're going to be 3.5 million to 4 million units short? Like, if that's the focus, What's happening here?
Oh, lots of things. Lots of things are happening.
Throw it on the table.
And personally, it's just improper planning, improper foresight. There is no way you can sit there and start throwing 1 million people into a country a year when you don't even have enough houses. And get the immigration subject's a whole topic on its own. I get it. Builds workforce and all this stuff, population growth. But it is creating quite a problem, let alone a lot of these immigrants are coming with money.
Yes.
More money than our actual young Canadians have. Therefore, taking away home ownership from someone who's already lived here a long time. Don't get me wrong, immigrants come to Canada, they become a Canadian immigrant, it's a Canadian dream, own a property, but they are creating this, again, I call it the paradox of demand and supply issue. And until they really solve that,
So you're saying they haven't solved the fundamental economic...
Buddy, they've solved shit.
All right.
It's all gibberish. It's all talk.
Okay, so we're going to tackle the Liberal housing plan first. So this is definitely important because, of course, the Liberals are in power currently, and they've developed actually a comprehensive plan online that's available. If you take a look, you'll see on the first page it says, every Canadian deserves a place to call home. And for many, young people in particular, the dream of owning their own home feels like it's moving further out of reach. You shouldn't lose a bidding war on your home to speculators, and you shouldn't have to move far away from your job, your school, or your family, or just afford your rent. What do you think about that statement?
I agree. It'd be very nice. It'd be very nice if that is possible. But I don't see it.
Okay.
Let's live in the world of reality.
Yeah,
Let's live in the world of reality. Great tagline. Don't get me wrong. It sounds wonderful on paper. A lot of stuff sounds wonderful on paper. But let's look at the reality of our country. The biggest mistake we made was the federal government removed itself from housing. It didn't happen on October 21st, 2015, contrary to some of the comments I've read on the internet. This started happening in the 1970s. So we've made it harder for people to buy homes because the federal government decided it wanted to favor balanced budgets. It wanted to favor removing their responsibility on something like housing, which, okay, the demand flatlined in the 90s. We all saw what happened. That was the last big divestment from it. But let's live in the world of reality. People have been moving further and further out of downtown cores for decades. 4 decades. They ran, the CBC ran an interview in the late 80s about rising home prices in downtown Toronto and people commuting from Kitchener-Waterloo. Right. Let's live in the world of reality. That's the world we live in. Urban sprawl, people leaving the cities, nobody wanting to live in downtown cores, and now it's starting to sound to me, just by the demographic changes in downtown Toronto, it's the opposite. People want to go back into the cities, where now it's extremely unaffordable.
Yes, absolutely. And so if we were going to look at the actual housing plan specifically, we can take a look at things like, I don't know, you notice probably clients or people or clients of mine have a hard time putting together a down payment for their home, okay? So they came out with being able to afford a down payment, and of course they came out with a tax-free first home savings account. Have you heard of that before? Yes. Thoughts on that?
I like it.
Okay.
I know people who use it, but you have to have the money to put into the account. That's the biggest blowback I get. You have to, who has $8,000?
What I would do differently with this specific policy would be, if you want to cap it at $40,000, allow them to do a lump sum of $40,000, let a parent contribute to it and give them the tax break. So now they have the $40,000 now, rather than waiting $8,000, 5 times to then get $40,000.
I personally think they should up the number from $8,000 as well.
I understand the argument, but I like that there is a benefit on the other side with it, where you can leverage that against your income taxes. It saves young people a bit more money that way. I'm not saying I completely agree with the plan. I think you're right. By the time you're allowed to cash out, housing prices will go up. But government policy is always made in the now, which is why most of the time it doesn't work. The QEW is still 6 lanes. They built it
right
60 years ago. Yeah, the population has like quadrupled. Same highway, more cars. We don't plan ahead for those things. So whereas I agree with a lot of what they're trying to do, and I understand that benefit they're trying to give to people, yes, I live in the reality where what are house prices going to be by the time they save the $40,000, and what's the average price for around the country going to be?
Let's look at another policy. If we look at them, there are quite a few of them actually. I got to say it's pretty elaborate plan. One of them says reduce incentives for speculation and house flipping. So they want to establish an anti-flipping tax on residential properties, requiring properties to be held for at least 12 months. If you're going to ride on this plan, why are we taxing?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not even opposed to that.
You're not opposed to it?
I'm not totally opposed to that. I'm a realtor. I like to help people buy and sell properties. But at the end of the day, you know what? You're going to buy a property, you build equity. You're going to make more money.
Yeah.
Who
However,
cares
it
what the
says,
flat tax is in the beginning? You're banking on what it's worth in 20 years.
what if there's a change in life? It says here, okay, change in life circumstances, for example, pregnancy, death, divorce.
Divorce.
Like, okay. Yes.
Not opposed to that.
Right.
Not opposed to the change in
Okay.
life stuff. But if I'm dealing
So if
with
you buy a house-
Joe from Toronto who comes down and says, hey, man, I'm going to buy this and you're going to sell it to me for me in 6 months and I'm going to make $100,000.
Don't you guys think that's going to be hard to regulate, though?
It's very hard to regulate. It's very hard to regulate a lot of the first-time buyer stuff too, because
Yeah, we'll
like,
see how it
yeah,
goes,
there's
buddy. I think
loopholes
it's a
around
lot
everything.
of just gibberish again. Continue.
Yeah. What else?
Okay.
They have the support of two progressive parties, by the way, right now in their minority parliament. That should have been something that was done on day one.
Let's go back to the housing plan.
We'll
stick with it.
It's the truth, Vince.
Yes, it is the truth,
It's the
but
truth.
we'll stick with the plan. Let's talk about this one. This one helps renters become owners. So they're going to create a rent-to-own program. And in that program, they're going to commit $1 billion in loans and grants to develop and scale up rent-to-own projects with private, not-for-profit, and co-op partners.
Rent shouldn't eat up most of your paycheck. Vulnerable people shouldn't have to sleep in tents or in their cars.
Wages are one problem. The short supply of apartments is another. The third, a lack of regulations on current rental properties. This expert says the crisis calls for rent subsidies.
Consider rent geared to income. That's a way of ensuring that the low-income Canadians can at least afford the rent that they do have to pay now.
Good luck.
Why?
Just again, I mean, rent-to-own's been around for a very, very long time. I've yet to, it's worked mildly for very, 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 very small percentage. It doesn't work well. It just, the owner gets tired of waiting, or the person's positions change. They're always struggling, and it's just, on the outside looking in, sounds all fine and dandy. I think $1 billion could be taken and spent somewhere else.
Okay. Okay.
They have provisions in that though that I read about, that you have to have up to 5% down to qualify for the program. Now we're getting back to the who has money for the down payment again. You see what I
It's a
mean?
big one. It's a big one. The down payment is
Down payment's huge. Not to mention the taxes, land transfer tax. You want to buy in downtown Toronto? There's there's provincial and municipal land transfer tax. So how do you pay for that? On a $600,000 property, you're paying $16,000.
Absolutely. Well, they're also having a policy on helping them with saving closing costs on a first-time home buyer tax credit. So they're saying here they're going to double the first-time home buyer tax credit from $5,000 to $10,000, which will put $1,500 in your pocket to make a home purchase a little bit easier. So this is for first-time home buyers. They're going to increase that credit.
What are lawyer fees now? $2,000?
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
solving nothing. What's $1,500 going to do?
And maybe Shawn will agree with me on this. Why don't they ever come to the frontline workers, the realtors? I sit with first-time buyers. I work with them. Shawn works with them. Why are they not coming to us and asking these questions? We can help you iron out these policies. If you want to get reelected, I wouldn't be talking to the people on the board. I'd be talking to the people working on the front lines. They're the people that see it daily.
Absolutely. 100%. I've got way better solutions that I see than what they're talking about.
Okay, well, I can't hear those. I can't wait to hear about those a little later on. We will talk about those. This one I thought was really interesting. The Home Buyers Bill of Rights. Have you seen this one?
Yes, I read that.
I have not heard.
Okay, so this is a really interesting. This will actually impact your sector. Banning blind bidding, which prevents bidders from knowing the bids of other prospective buyers and ultimately drives up home prices. Yeah. Establishing a legal right to a home inspection. Make sure that buyers have the peace of mind that their investment is sound. Ensuring total transparency on the history of recent house sales with proper title searches. So there's a lot of things that are going to play here. What are your thoughts on this banning blind bidding?
Ask Australia. Does their prices still do this? So banning blind bidding is not going to fix that. The second one refresh my memory, sorry?
Legal right to a home inspection.
We already have those conditions and agreements, and we should be leaving that up to the clients to decide. I don't want the government regulating what clients decide. If you want to go in without a home inspection, that is your right as a purchaser, and I agree with that. And there is a provision already in the agreement of purchase and sale, I think it's clause 13, that says you have a right to a home inspection unless other provisions in the agreement. The third one, there already is a title search. It's done at the lawyers. There is a legal right to that, and you should purchase title insurance as a buyer.
And also it says requiring real estate agents to disclose to all participants in a transaction when they're involved in both sides of a potential sale.
We already have to do that. There's already paperwork, and Shawn and I know this because they just redid all the regulations. TRESA, the switch from REBA to TRESA. If you live in Ontario, this is very important. All of that has to be disclosed on the paperwork. Designated representatives, multiple representation. There's a lot more now work to do, which there should be, and transparency to buyers and sellers, which I think is good.
Yeah, so I want to hear from you, Shawn, on this blind bidding thing.
Well, if I was a seller, I would not be into the blind bidding because that's my asset and I want the most money I can possible. And blind bidding will yield you the highest thing. I also understand it from the other side of the buyer. So talking about the changes in real estate, they have made the changes that you can have open bids or closed bids. But again, RECO, Ontario Real Estate Association, they did it amongst themselves and didn't reach out to realtors because they solved nothing. You can manipulate it just as much, and agents are already trying to figure out how to
find a way around it. They're going to find a way around it.
Because the thing is, they should allow either closed bids or open bids. That's it.
At what point are property rights going to actually be property rights? Like, I don't know, at some point, shouldn't you, if you own a home, you should be able to decide how you want to sell it.
And this change in legislation gives that power back to the clients, which is what we want. We want clients to have power. We don't want power. We want to represent you. We want to get you the most money. That's our job. But we can't do that if you start regulating how people are going to make decisions.
Here's the problem. If the government would get off their fucking ass and start building some houses, we wouldn't have to have all these blind bids in the situation of this crazy amount of competition. Why do we have competition? Number one, because demand's high and supply is low. Well, guess what? Start building units. I've been selling real estate for 20 years. In real estate, I never even knew what holding offers was. Now I know all about it because of the situation they created. So instead of talking about the blind bids, build some freaking houses, lessen the demand, and there we go.
In regards to building homes, there is a plan, albeit it's I'm not sure if it's a good plan at this point. However, there's a plan, and the government has established a fund. It's called the Housing Accelerator Fund. They're going to invest $4 billion to grow the annual housing supply in the country's largest cities every year, creating a target of 100,000 new middle-class homes by 2024, 2025.
Our government is here to help. We have a plan to double home building over the next decade for people at all income levels. And part of this plan is our $4 billion Housing Accelerator Fund.
Interestingly, the Housing Accelerator Fund he has created costs $4 billion. And how many houses has it accelerated? 0. Not one new house has been built. This is not acceleration. This is bureaucracy.
100,000 new units. Yes, positive because they're building new units.
Any announcement for me that's building houses is good news.
That's what we want.
100%. That's what we want to hear.
Agreed.
Okay.
I agree. It's great positive news. But again, I feel it's just all talk.
In what sense?
In the sense that, again, I just don't see how they're
You don't think they're going to execute?
I just don't think they're going to execute because there still is so many challenges.
Now, they do have a use it or lose it policy. So that means you actually have to use the money for that purpose or you lose it.
There's going to be a lot of loss.
Wow. I wish they did that with healthcare. What's it called? So I'll tell you the problem with this plan. Okay, as much as I'll tell you, you want to announce housing being built? Hey, I'll come to the announcement and light off fireworks with you. A lot of the money is being withheld until 2025. I wonder why. So we know there's an election coming up. A lot of that money is on hold back until 2025, which is fine. But if this is a crisis, if we're going to use the word crisis,
why are you putting politics before?
What? This is what I don't like about the word crisis now, because now we're doing with the word crisis like we've done to the word homeless. Okay. We've turned it into we're experiencing homelessness. That doesn't make urgency. When you experience something, usually the experience goes away, but it's not. It's become chronic. So if this is a housing crisis,
we should do something now.
Where's the shovel? Yeah. Where's the backhoe? Where's the steel? Where's the glass? Where's the concrete? That's crisis mode. World War II, what did we do? Shut down all the automotive factories and we started building tanks and bombs and bullets.
But they are, listen, they
And
are.
that's how it
They
should
are.
be.
I don't know if you've seen it. I'm sure you have on the news.
Yeah.
From Burlington to Port Colborne to Vaughan.
Wonderful.
We have a road show of politicians going, handing out checks to the mayors of the municipalities. Great announcements. Okay, fine, we're spending money, but we're delaying this? What's the deal?
What's the deal? We have a problem with deficit spending in this country. That also didn't happen in 2015. That's been going on a long time. Okay, so there's a problem with deficit spending, and a lot of this money is on holdback because, yeah, they want to release it and get stuff done, most likely in an election year. I'm not speaking from
But is that fair?
No, absolutely
it's not. It's political.
Because in exactly what you said, it's a crisis. But the funny thing is, we've been talking about a housing crisis for the past 4 years.
Okay.
And again, guess what? What's accomplished? Nothing. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, right? So hence, again, agreed, talk. And that's the problem I've been having. I've been hearing talk for 4 freaking years.
It's also $4 billion for 100,000 units. I mean, we're going to be 3.5 million units short.
Agreed. Again,
So
it's bullshit. It's bullshit. The major problem and the solution to all of this is really the number one sticking point right now starts with the municipalities. The municipalities are not approving developments quick enough.
Right.
I hate to tell you, they should privatize the companies so they can go, like engineering companies, whatever. They do the approval process. Yep, this is done. Start turning it out even more. Just got off the phone yesterday with the builder. They have a project. They've been waiting 3 freaking years. Yeah. It's not hard, man. Everyone knows the rules. Everyone knows the metrics. But they got no one working at the municipalities. I know some municipalities have already started going to outside firms. Everyone should start doing it. Let's get the approvals going. And that is the first start of the battle.
So you think that we have to, this is kind of all talk. Municipalities have to start fast tracking approvals
100%.
to get things moving.
That is the first piece of the pie.
Okay.
It all starts at the municipality.
Let's talk about the conservative housing plan now. Okay, we've tackled the liberal housing plan. Now we'll do the conservative housing plan. Polyev actually released in September of 2023 something called Building Homes, Not Bureaucracy. And his...
Good luck.
Yes. A politician saying to not build bureaucracy is interesting. So it says Polyev announces his bold plan to bring homes you can afford by removing gatekeepers and red tape, fining big city governments that block new homes, giving bonuses to cities that free up land, and making transit funding dependent on getting more keys and doors. Thoughts?
I'm not opposed to that.
Sounds good.
It does, because he is tackling the issues that really, it's number one, red tape is huge. Red tape for the bill, and that again, those starts at the municipalities, okay? But also too, transit. Again, we didn't really discuss that too much, but transit is going to be huge. Okay? People can't afford cars anymore. People, again, climate, people don't want the gas, all that stuff. So transit is huge as well to create more affordable options. You build larger, high-density properties, buy bus stations, all this and that, allowing people easier to get around. So don't disagree there with that, but how's he going to roll it out? He can, again, talk.
Okay. Well, okay. I want to get your thoughts on the initial sort of tagline that he threw.
If I have to read the word gatekeeper one more time, I'm going to lose my mind because I'm tired of hearing that word. That's just so like, I can't handle it.
It makes one side sound sinister, essentially.
Well, here's the thing. He wants to talk about gatekeepers. How is the prime minister going to remove elected officials that vote against these housing policies in municipalities that are NIMBY? You can't forcibly remove elected officials in this country. This is Canada. So I already don't know how that's going to be accomplished. So this sounds very like King of Canada, George III kind of policy.
NIMBY meaning that not in my backyard, essentially. And of course, what he says is he's going to impose a NIMBY penalty on big city gatekeepers, there's that word again, for egregious cases of NIMBYism. So we'll empower Canadians to file complaints with the federal infrastructure department. So basically,
that's already subjective. What's a NIMBY? A NIMBY is different to anybody. So what is it? So on day one, his email inbox is going to explode in his face because one person says I want affordable housing in my backyard, and 500 other people in the community say they don't want it. This is what I mean. He's running against a 9-year incumbent. Everybody can do it better. I understand the mission behind here. I like the tagline, building homes without bureaucracy. Who the hell wouldn't like something like that? But my problem is this feels very like George III, King of Canada kind of things. The worst way to build housing, by the way, is to make enemies with the levels of government you have to work with, and that's what a lot of that housing policy sounds like to me.
That is a good point. I do agree there. I mean, you do have to have some.
Everyone's got to work together.
Between all
Everyone's
levels
got to
of
work
government,
together.
right? You can't have sides, although, I mean, we're in politics here, so there are always sides. But let's look at this one. It says that they're going to require, cities must increase the number of homes built by 15% each year, and then 15% on top of the previous target every single year. So it compounds. So going back to this whole thing of building more units, right?
Reiterating all levels of government need to build 3.5 million additional homes by 2030 to restore affordability.
Canada's housing costs have risen faster and higher than almost any other country on earth.
Housing is now the second most important issue among voters surveyed.
If targets are missed, it's going to be punitive. So what's your thought?
A guy wants to get elected. That's my thought.
Okay.
That's it. He's saying all these great things. How are you going to hold the city to 15% building and then, well, you didn't meet your quota, punitive? No, that will be washed away as soon as the guy gets in power. You know, I'm not opposed. Like, my whole thing is this, is I've heard the same talk for 4 years. The same talk. I got to be, like, the last federal election, the Conservatives came out real hot and heavy with a housing plan. That was really their whole thing. And I thought they were almost going to drive it home with it. But anyways, so if we go back to then, they were talking housing plan and this is what we're going to do. Guess what, guys? What happened? Nothing. So they're going to talk about it all again. Nothing's going to happen. Like, come on, let's all be realistic here. 3.5 million units by the end of this decade. It is impossible. It's not going to happen. So I really don't care what they say until I actually start seeing action. I need to start seeing action. And like I said, it's got to start with the municipalities. There does not need to be land given. We don't need more land. We've got plenty of land within our infrastructures that we can use. Don't cry me about, oh, we need more land, we need more land. Well, I'll tell you, you let more land go, though, it's just going to let the rich get richer. The rich are going to get richer. They're going to build housing costs. Like, it's not going to be cheap housing.
Right.
The builders will just get richer. People will get units. Investors will buy houses. No. There's plenty of land to work with. They just need to start getting through the red tape. It's just complete red tape. And then again, I love the idea of transportation improving. We can agree here in Niagara, our transportation is not great.
So what they're going to say is if you do not meet this quota, they're going to actually withhold transit infrastructure funding from cities.
Okay, and
so
how's
there's
that?
the punitive.
But how's that going to work out? Okay, next thing you know, well, we're doing our budget for the next year. Well, we didn't do what we were supposed to do, so we don't have money for our buses. Guess what? The government's going to have to give the money anyways. So they can't. There's not.
We're going to have mayors against prime ministers here. Like, we're going to have mayors of cities that are going to start to go and speak up.
He's not elected yet, so let's see what happens. But it's like I said, you're not going to get nothing done by making enemies. I understand how the leader of the Conservative Party thinks. His primary method is to provoke and confront. That's not going to work when you're running a country. And it looks great, especially to an entire generation of people who just started getting exposed to politics. We saw what was happening in the US. It's not going to work. You have to build partnerships. And the one thing we're not talking about, we're missing an entire level of government that gets nothing but a free pass in this entire conversation, and it's the provinces that have been sitting on their ass doing nothing Because if they do something, who comes out smelling like a rose? There's 7 conservative premiers in this country and a liberal prime minister. What do you think those provinces are doing right now? Oh, there's a housing crisis. Or talk to the feds. Talk to the feds. The feds haven't built a house since 1999. It belongs to the provinces. And what did we do in Ontario in 2000? Here, Toronto can handle their affordable housing stuff. Spoiler alert, they can't. That's why people like me are getting a 10.5% property tax increase. You're not going to build housing by threatening municipalities and letting an entire level of government that is responsible for most of the planning to get away with things. That's not going to happen. You have to go in there, and whoever would threaten Toronto or St. Catharines or Sudbury, we're not going to give you funding for that transit project because you couldn't meet this quota. So now jobs are lost. There's got to be some kind of retroactive pay for canceling a project. This is going to end up costing us more money, and it's not worth it, in my opinion.
There's going to be conflict, obviously, here.
Of course.
Right? We're going to see that.
And Anthony hit the nail right in the head, though, because as I've been saying, we have the municipality and now the federal government are throwing out all this stuff. But again, there's province in all this. So agreed.
Where are
all 3 governments have to work together in order to get this done. And that's the challenge with politics today. They're so self-involved. It's all about just getting to the next election to get voted again. What the hell happened to them doing their job and helping a country, doing their job and helping us all out? It's not like that anymore. And hence, why the world is going to hell in a handbag. Anyways, conversation for another day. But agreed, all 3 government need to work together. And again, that's why the federal government can say whatever they want with their plans, both the liberal and the conservatives, but nothing will get accomplished unless all 3 work together.
Yeah. Who writes all the checks? The feds.
The feds.
Feds write the checks. Provinces are responsible for planning. Where is it going? Yada, yada. And municipalities is all zoning and yada, and all that other stuff. And we're missing an entire level of government in this conversation, but that could be 5 episodes of what they haven't done.
So, yeah, I mean, we've picked it apart, right? We've picked the liberal side apart. We've picked the conservative side apart, obviously. It sounds like you guys have some ideas on what can be done. So let's talk about that. Okay, so we had a look at both plans, all right? And of course, no plan is perfect. But let me ask you this, Shawn. If you tomorrow had the reins and were able to...
If Shawn was Prime Minister of Canada.
Was Prime Minister of Canada, what is your top housing policy? What would you do?
It would be to get the municipalities to start turning over projects quicker.
And how would you do that?
I would look at private consultation. Instead of relying on the municipalities and their employees and their workers, start firing it out to engineering companies who can just make sure it's all done within the parameters, everything like that. Also, too, the most important thing, and I know Anthony will agree with this, they all have to work together. It does not happen unless all 3 levels of government work together, but the important piece is the municipalities who need to start turning over land and turning over projects. I know there's tons of projects out there and builders are still waiting. Okay, here we are in a crisis.
All right. So that's one. Anthony, same question to you. You're Prime Minister tomorrow. Oh boy.
I might vote for you, Anthony.
Okay. I'd vote for you because I love
Thanks,
you.
buddy. Thanks, buddy.
Prime Minister Anthony.
Prime Minister Anthony, what is your top priority?
Well, first of all, my top priority would be finally intertwining labor and housing, because those are 2 very important things. We have money, we'll always have money, but we're forgetting a very important component, and that's labor. So first and foremost, I would be incentivizing the provinces to invest more money in the skilled trades. Our immigration policy would include immigrating in more skilled tradespeople from other countries. They don't have to stay here permanently, but we're in a housing crisis, so we're in crisis mode. That's the labor part covered. Let's talk about the money. A low-income housing tax credit for developers. You need to incentivize these people to build low-income housing tax credits work. Removing the GST, which the federal government already did, I support that. Covering the cost of development charges for municipalities, we're going to have to eat a lot of the cost at the federal level. They can't afford to build infrastructure. The property tax base can't afford it. So we have to be there to cover development charges and cover the tax that we're going to be removing on this. I would double the land transfer tax rebate for first-time home buyers. I would probably increase the amount of money, now that you convinced me, because I consulted with higher counsel, to increase the amount of money in the first-time home buyer savings account. Okay. I wouldn't make the repayment as quick for the RSP plan, and I would focus on density in major municipalities and along trade corridors. That is going to densify it. We already have the infrastructure in place. It's cost effective, and that's what it has to be. There has to be fiscal responsibility, labor, economic strength, tax incentive. That's what I would be doing.
Okay, and so how would you pay for this?
How would I pay for this?
Yes.
How
Not
would I-
out of pocket, but I mean...
Oh God, I don't have that much of a limit on my credit card. How would I pay for this? Fair shared sacrifice. We're going to have to dip into the tax base, and we're going to have to do what we did in crisis mode in World War II. We're going to deficit spend. It's not going anywhere, folks, but deficit spending to solve a crisis should not be something that the Canadian people should be against. We're probably going to have to raise taxes, not on middle-income workers. I don't even want to go there. It's probably going to have to happen. We're going to have to look at corporate tax rates. We're going to have to look at the highest income earning tax rates. And most importantly, we're going to have fair shared sacrifices among the three levels of government. It can't just be the federal government eating all of this. That's what I would look at. I know I said raising taxes, now nobody likes me, but it's always something that's on the table. It's on the table every time you file your T4 or you sell your house that year. They make you write down what you sold your house for. Everybody's watching.
But I would say, I mean, I guess this is why we haven't seen these guys say that, right? Because like that's political suicide at this point in time, raising taxes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
How would you fund your project?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, here's the challenge is, again, I like your ideas. I love it. But at someday, we're going to have to stop raising the taxes.
Then I said raising taxes.
Because you're going to, like...
Possibly, I said.
Our society is getting sewered as it is, affordability, this and that, and countries are getting more expensive to run. So, again, I would try to look at other solutions. Like I said, I mean, I don't mind the grant option. And again, it's the approval process that will get shovels in the ground quicker. And the other thing is the transit too, and that can all be done without mega spending.
So I've got one for both of you because this is something that I think is pretty taboo in this country to talk about right now, and is like that, right?
I love that.
And is going to be like it's a driver. Okay, we're addressing supply, build more, find ways to create more supply. What about the demand? Can we continue to bring in 1,250,000 new Canadians into this country if we have a housing crisis? If it's truly a crisis, can we afford to bring these people in?
No.
I 100% agree as well. And I also agreed with what Anthony said. We do need, again, labor is low. There's not labor to even build these units. They need to really start looking at who they let in these countries. At the end of the day, you were talking taxes. You let in high-skilled laborers. They make money. You tax their money. Boom, bada bing. The country starts going.
So perhaps I've got one for you. So instead of raising taxes, let's maybe reduce the demand for that tax dollar on new Canadians that are coming in. And is this unpopular or is this not
no? So I just want to make it clear for the viewers. I said possibly raising taxes, and I'm not running for prime minister. I said possibly, but that should always be on. Okay, so how about this? We already have enough revenue.
No. You liberal. You clearly stated, and your solution was that hey, at the end of the day, it's going to have to come from tax.
I appreciate your honesty in saying that. It's
why lie? I don't want to lie to 40 million people if they're watching. Okay? I don't want to lie to 40 million people. Okay, but I really thought about this more on the provincial level. I think more in Ontario perspective. That's 1,070,000 square kilometers I have to think about. That's enough for my brain. So I think about this more on a provincial level. We already have revenue streams that can be diverted into building more housing. Nobody likes the carbon tax. Nobody likes it. I get that. I've publicly said I support it because I get the mission. Why can't we divert those funds into building it? We have the money. The money's always there. But if I have $1 million and I have no labor, what are we building, Shawn? You're looking at me looking at a blueprint. No. I can't build a house. I don't know what a screwdriver looks like. So part of that immigration policy needs to be skilled labor. Yes. And this is not unlike anything that's never happened before. When our ancestors came here, what were they? Manual laborers. Yes. What did they do? Bricks, concrete, asphalt, framing. Yes. Half of the Italian people that still do framing in Thorold, they've been doing it since 1965. Yeah. They can't retire because the demand for building is too high. So I said possibly raising taxes, but also on a provincial level, there are ways to divert revenue streams we have so you don't have to raise taxes. Who's going to tell people in Ontario that you might have to pay a little bit more at the pump? No one's going to do that.
Right.
Who's going to tell them that instead of spending money on this, we're going to divert this into housing? Everyone's scared of the electorate. I'm not scared of voters.
But why are we afraid to tackle this immigration policy? Because this is what it is right now. This is taboo. Like, if I don't see Polyev or Trudeau mentioning anything, it's almost like they haven't made a link.
Oh boy.
Why?
Do you want to know why they won't do it?
Yes, why?
Because there's extremes on either sides of the political spectrum in both parties. That if you say, I don't want more immigrants coming here, you're painted as something different.
Yes.
If you say, we want more people coming in here, you upset the extremes and saying you're making this country non-Canadian, which I don't agree with at all. I'm first generation Canadian, man. Like, this country was built on immigrants, but I think the vetting process, that's what, if you're going to make more bureaucracy and make government bigger, the vetting process on who we're bringing into this country, what their skills are, and what they're going to contribute to the ever-growing tax base we need to pay for things. That's what I believe in.
Totally don't disagree, actually, with them there.
Okay.
That shouldn't be a liberal or a conservative policy. That should be a policy for the country.
Yes, but the pushback we're going to get is that what we're saying essentially is that we're going to say we need, people who are going to lay bricks, people who are going to know how to build homes, because that's our crisis. Yeah. And we need to pick these people over a refugee from Ukraine or another refugee from another country. That's a tough. What?
Okay.
Is that what we're saying?
Okay, how about this? What about the people who are already in this country?
Yes.
We always forget about those people. People who lost their jobs, people who want to get paid more. Why is there no incentive to drag those people out of either service sector jobs that are paying minimum wage?
Yes.
And why is there no incentive to get those people in hard hats and work boots and learn a trade? My generation was screwed out of this, Shawn,
I'll tell you this.
And you know it.
If I was an 18-year-old kid leaving high school right now, I'd be going to get my gas fitters license, my plumbing ticket.
100%.
And guess what? I would go work under someone for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then guess what? I would start running my own company.
Boom.
And I promise you, in 20 years, you will be rich. You will have 20 people working for you because at the end of the day, you're short laborers. Again, you're going to be paid more and you're going to build yourself up. Don't go study to be the doctor. Because if you're running a gas fitting business in 20 years from now, you'll probably be making more than a doctor.
You'll be making bank. Absolutely. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Shawn, thank you so much. Here's
My
what
absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love having you guys on.
We love it.
Today, we discussed the housing plans, both on the liberal side and conservative side. I think essentially what I took out of it today is that no plan is perfect. Going direct to the source to get that information, whether it's a realtor or mortgage broker, to find out what housing policies are going to actually serve the people. And I also like you had to say today, Shawn, about working together with all levels of government and making sure that, this is not about politics. This shouldn't be about politics. If this is truly a crisis, we should put all politics aside and come to the table and fix the problem. The other thing I think is a major takeaway that I took is there's a little bit of a taboo discussion about immigration and the policy here. We definitely cannot continue to bring in the amount of people that we've been bringing in. I do think 500,000 people is too many a year. I think it should be scaled back temporarily, and we should be more selective with who we need to bring into the country. I do like the idea of finding ways to get our current population that we should not ignore to actually become skilled trades, because we need them in order to continue to build. We are going to be severely short, 3.5 to 4 million units short by 2030 is what it said. We have to address this problem. So everyone who's listening to this and took this in, I think if you're like me, you're thinking there's no such thing as a political savior, right? So if you're sitting at home thinking, well, I'm going to wait till they solve all the problems before I do anything, you're going to wait a long time. So if you want to become a homeowner, then you got to take matters into your own hands. And that's essentially what I took from there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Vince.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.